Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kansas City Public Library Signature Programming Series. I'm Deputy Director Carrie Coogan. In conjunction with Kansas City Restaurant Week, we are hosting the second in a three-part series, The Past, Present, and Future of Restaurants. We will be focusing on our local hometown entrepreneurial restaurant owners to see how they are coping, adapting, and managing during this difficult time. The toll of COVID-19, as we all know, extends to some of Kansas City's most loved restaurants. Blue Stem, Nara, Pollo, those are just a few of many that have that are closing. Still, many places have been able to hang on, and even some new places are opening up. So in this lunchtime series, we have the great Liz Cook, who's a restaurant critic and writer for The Pitch. Liz is going to visit with restaurateurs and industry workers across the spectrum to assess what has been lost. How are kitchens surviving and adapting today? What further adjustments are likely for owners and operators, for their staffs, and even for those of us who are longing to dine out again? But probably most important is, what is it that we can all do as a community to help make sure that our beloved restaurants survive and stay open? So today we are pleased to host Maddie's Foods owners Arvalisha Woods and India Purnell. Woods and Purnell opened Maddie's Foods at 63rd and Holmes this past September. We also have Lucy Rieger from J. Rieger and Company. Lucy is the brand manager for her family's East Bottoms Distillery. And finally, Observation Pizza's Austin Sudemeyer. Sudemeyer was a cook at Plate, a Fair, and the Savoy at 21C before moving to Observation Pizza in the Crossroads. Just a few of who we're going to have talk today with our moderator, Liz Cook. And then just a reminder, we have another program next Friday, or this coming Friday at noon. So we invite you to join the conversation by adding your questions to the chat, and we will take them near the end of the program. And we want you to be a part of this conversation. If you missed the first program in the series, you can see it on the library's website at kclibrary.org, where you'll see all of our programming archived there as well. So many thanks to our guests this week who are willing to share their stories. And now please welcome Liz Cook and our panelists for today.
Thanks so much, Carrie. That's a great introduction. So going into this year, I think the hospitality industry, and going into this year, I mean, not 2021, but going into the pandemic, the hospitality industry really seemed healthier than ever. I mean, as early as or as late as March 2020, the beginning of March, industry groups were still projecting an increase in sales in the hospitality industry. And since then, I think we all know the story, almost 1 in 6 restaurants estimated nationwide has closed, either permanently or long-term, and more than 2 million bar and restaurant workers are still out of work months since the pandemic began. But despite those grim headline statistics, new restaurants and bars are still opening up, and existing ones are adapting in new and inventive ways that are worth highlighting. Most restaurants and bars instituted new COVID-19 health and safety protocols almost overnight. Many began doing carry-out or delivery for the first time this year, and still others have pivoted to entirely new menus or concepts or service models to meet our changing tastes right now. So I want to start with Arvalisha Woods and India Purnell, who are the sisters and business partners behind Maddie's Foods, a plant-based restaurant in East Brookside. And I want to note here before we get started that Arvalisha and India are graciously broadcasting live from the restaurant, which is open today. So you may hear customers coming in behind them. That's what it's like to operate a restaurant right now. So thank you both for joining us. Arvalisha and India, you had a successful food truck, Maddie's Vegan Eats, at the start of the pandemic, but you opened Maddie's Foods as a brick and mortar restaurant in September. Some people, no one in this call or watching, of course, but some people might say this was crazy when times are so tough for restaurateurs. So what made you decide to go through with this, and what made you decide this was the right time to open?
Well, I think the most important part was that we stepped out on faith. It wasn't something that we knew we were going to do. We knew that we were getting innovative with making sure that The community still felt Maddie's presence by doing online order and pre-order. They would order on, throughout the week, and we'll let them pick up on Saturdays. And that we knew at that moment, we know how to run a restaurant a little bit, just a little bit. And so even in COVID, people are still hungry. So it's like, we can't die just because other things are dying, So it's like, let us continue to push the vision, make it plain, let the world see it, in spite of what has been pushed on us, and that's COVID, So we started looking in the craziest season, but the doors open, and we credit that to God, just making sure that we were still following his footsteps that he had for us.
Yeah.
What has the community response been like since you opened?
Crazy. It has been the most welcoming feeling. Just because you don't know, you have something great, but you just don't know. People are scared, and they have every right to be. People are want to be cautious, and so you're not sure if anyone, they want to support you, but it's like, I may not be able to right now, but we have been receiving just the warmest welcome from just the Brookside community.
Yes.
And just people traveling from Leavenworth and
Iowa. We've had people come from literally
Yes.
everywhere just to come and support Maddie's, to keep Maddie's alive, even though there are different restaurants that close down, and that's such a sucky situation. However, they have seen something grow in us that we didn't have in Kansas City. So it wasn't like a McDonald's closing. It was like, oh, no, we don't have a lot of plant-based. We don't have a lot of vegan. Let's keep them open. And that's what they've been giving us. And it's been so great.
All right. Austin, I want to bring in you here next. And, just like India and Arvalisha, you are joining us from the restaurant right now. It is open, slinging pizzas today. So thank you.
Yep. No problem.
So in addition to adapting to a new business and a new business model during the pandemic, you obviously had to adapt to something even more difficult, which was the loss of a close friend and Observation Pizza's founder, Nick Fella, in a motorcycle accident this summer. At what point did you come on board to Observation Pizza, and what was it about Nick's vision that drew you in?
I came on board the end of July, about the 22nd of July. And really what drew me in here was I had worked with Nick at the Savoy. He was CDC at the Savoy before we all were furloughed and let go.
CDC, chef de cuisine, for those who are listening in.
So he was furloughed, started making pizzas at home, grew into, needing a bigger space. He ended up renting out the kitchen at the Bower because they weren't doing events and they needed, to make their money as well. And it just, working with Nick at the Savoy was just so much fun. He made it seem not so much like work, it was more like just hanging out and we're all making food together, so it was really kind of a family down there, and once he called me up and said, hey, I need some help, I need to open up another day, like, are you interested in helping me run this while I go and build out his brick and mortar that he was planning on moving to by November. And I was like, yeah, dude, like I want to work with you. I've learned so much from you. I only worked with him for probably 2 months at the Savoy before we ended up shutting down. I had started at the Savoy right before Restaurant Week last year, and then ended up furloughed before my 90 days were even up at the Savoy. But it was just Nick's ideology of how he would like to run a restaurant. And he didn't want anything super crazy from Observation. He just wanted simple food that, comforted people during this time of uncertainty.
Yeah. So after Nick's death, it seems like you and the other members of the Observation Pizza team came together relatively quickly to decide to keep the business going. What drove you to keep the business going?
Um, well, mostly the hype and response that he had built from, his customers early on. He built such a hype so quickly, in just a few months. And me and my girlfriend would go down there and get pizzas when he was still at his house. Like, I knew the pizza was great, and I just wanted to continue on with him. He was so happy right before the accident. Like, everything was going real well for him. He was getting his stuff together. He was doing this legit, and he had opened up restaurants down in New Orleans and everything, but he hadn't opened up a restaurant here. He didn't have his own spot here, and he was super proud about getting this up and going. And we just didn't want to see it die with Nick.
Yeah, I know the business has really brought comfort, as you noted, to a lot of people during the pandemic.
Yeah, we don't have bad days here. We have fun every day. We get in the weeds sometimes, but that's gonna happen no matter where we're at.
Yeah. Lucy, I want to bring you in here while we're talking about kind of business during the pandemic. Before the pandemic, J. Rieger Distillery seemed to really have entered into a golden age. I mean, the distillery had expanded into that East Bottoms space, which really feels like a campus, with the 2 on-site cocktail bars and a gift shop and a 2-story slide. So that was in, I think, July 2019. And then 8 months later, we had the first COVID restrictions and shutdowns in the city. So thinking back to March, if you can kind of put yourself back in that frame of mind, what were the conversations like at the distillery at the time, and how did you decide on a path forward from that?
Sure. Yeah, like you said, we opened our new distillery space in July of 19. That had been about 2 years in the making of acquiring the building and architect and raising money and getting that open. And so, we had just gone through a crazy holiday season. We had 3-4 holiday parties a day at the distillery. We were really excited for 2020 going into the new year. And then, we started hearing about COVID, and, we started kind of rounding up with a couple other business leaders that we are close with and kind of talking about, what do you guys think you're going to do and all that. And, the distillery is a family-owned business. I own it with my husband, Andy Rieger. And our biggest thing was at the time, we had 95 people on the payroll. And our first thought was, how are we going to keep these people employed? We have a very, we treat all of our staff like family. We hope, that's the culture we try to convey. And it's not just, it's not just a silly phrase that we say. I mean, our team is our family, and we didn't want to let them down, and we didn't want, we just felt very responsible for all of them, their families. And so the first conversations, I mean, when the shutdown first happened, I will say we gave ourselves about 24 hours to feel really bad for ourselves. And then we said, we're done. We have to make a plan. We've got to move forward. We've got to figure out how we're going to make this work. And so that was our biggest driver, was just how do we keep our people and how do we provide for them so that they can provide for their families. So that was our biggest motivation in all of our pivots.
Okay. So rather, I think notably, you began producing hand sanitizer pretty quickly. From a business operations perspective, how challenging was that to pivot from producing, whiskey to producing hand sanitizer full time?
Sure. So we never stopped producing whiskey, that was a really important thing to us, just because, whiskey does take 5-6 years to age. We didn't want to be sitting here in 2026, 2027 and saying, oh, we have no whiskey left. So it was really important we kept that going. But the pivot to hand sanitizer was both very obvious, but also very challenging for a handful of reasons. So it started by, I had a local skilled nursing facility reach out to me, just to the distillery saying, hey, I saw a distillery in Seattle making hand sanitizer. Could you guys do this? And I was like, we don't know how to make hand sanitizer, but we'll check into it. Checked into it. Turns out it's pretty easy if you have alcohol, and that's something we had a lot of. And so we were like, sure, we can do this. Let's start getting some supplies. And so I personally went to every single Michael's craft store in the Kansas City metro, buying up little plastic bottles. And I was like, well, I'll just buy a couple hundred because I'm not sure, how many bottles we'll need to make. So I bought a couple hundred bottles. If you saw any of the news during that time, it went a little crazy. We ended up doing about 250,000 bottles of hand sanitizer when it was all said and done.
That's
so
a
my
lot
little
of
Michael's. Yeah, it seems a little silly now in hindsight. So the biggest hurdle was the supply chain issues during that time. So while we did have alcohol, we didn't have things like bottles to package it in, right? So supply chain was crazy at the time. A lot of people trying to acquire supplies like that. So we were dealing with vendors that were saying, yeah, I'll sell you the bottles you need, but you have to buy a truckload. So you have to buy 40,000 bottles at a time, which is a big leap of faith. It was, that's a lot of money we're going to have to spend to acquire these materials, but there's a need for it. We've got to keep producing. So it was a lot of logistical issues that made it challenging. But, after a few weeks, we really got into a rhythm. Our team was incredible with the pivot. They were just, largely happy to keep working. And we could not have done it if our team would have just said, you know what? No, I was hired to be a bartender. I'm out on hand sanitizer. But they were so amazing about being like, no, let's do this. We can do this thing, help our community. And it was wild, but it was ultimately ended up being successful.
Yeah. So how important was that operation to helping you keep staff on the payroll during that time?
It was everything. If we did not do hand sanitizer, we would have had to lay off pretty much the entire staff.
Okay.
But we had a handful of people that, said safety, I want to stay home. I don't feel comfortable working. Totally fine. So we ended up keeping around 60 people through the thick of COVID early months. And we currently have around 50 people on the payroll still. So without hand sanitizer though, I honestly don't know where we would be right now.
Okay. For those who are just tuning in now or have tuned in late, I'm talking to Lucy Rieger of J. Rieger Co. Distillery, Austin Sudemeyer of Observation Pizza, and Arvelicia Woods and India Purnell of Maddie's Foods about the way they've adapted during the pandemic. And as a reminder, you can drop questions in the YouTube chat and we'll have time at the end to get to those. So please do send those as they come up for our panelists today. So India and Arvelicia, while we're talking about businesses that seem ideally suited to the pandemic, I know a lot of people are craving comfort food right now, whether it's pizza or nachos or smash burgers. And I can imagine some people who maybe haven't been to Maddie's and tried your foods feeling skeptical that they'll be able to stress eat vegan food. What would you say to people like that?
What do you have to lose? With how things have happened, everything that we had already planned in our minds, either to do or not to do, toss it. So right now it's really this is the time to be really open to things, to trying different things, because that's all we've been doing is winging it with trying things that we haven't tried before. So that would just be my advice. What do you have to lose? It doesn't hurt you to try it. We've been pushing an era where we're trying new things all day long. So.
And your menu seems pretty well suited to people who are craving comfort food. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to the menu there?
We really wanted to make sure that the food we like to eat before going plant-based, that we still could eat it. So we tried to mimic those things that we missed when we decided to go plant-based for health reasons and just trying to, live a healthier life or whatnot. When we couldn't find it that tasted, we couldn't find it. Yeah. We didn't know anybody who made it that tasted good to us. So we created it based off of our taste buds, and then it just, I guess everybody else taste buds is kind of like ours.
Yeah.
They like food that tastes good. So our menu is just some of the things that you really missed. Our brisket, and that was a tough one to really get because we went through some mushy tofu, some nasty tofu. Like we worked on that just like the macaroni, and that's everybody's like number one favorite thing on our menu is the macaroni because it's hard. It's almost impossible to find macaroni that tastes good, let alone vegan macaroni that tastes good. Like what? Ain't no way. So we just wanted everybody to really have the things that taste good, but that was good for you. It made you feel like, oh, I'm at home. I
Yeah.
can take this home and eat on my couch
I'm
and not
happy.
feel bad about it. Yeah, you just want to. We have a few customers that come in, and when they sit down and eat, there's one girl in particular. When she sits down, she dances the whole time that she's eating, and I think that is amazing because she be like, ooh. Oh, this is so good. And I'll be like, girl, you eat that. I love watching her eat her food because she is giving us a whole show.
I love that. And I can confirm, as a meat eater who has had the tofu brisket, it is not mushy. It is very good. So I highly recommend that to any skeptical people listening in on this call. I mean, Austin pizza too seems really well suited for the time that we're living in. I know there's been a lot of sales growth in some pizzerias, and I was looking before this call, Pizza Today, which is a very real and quite interesting industry publication, has reported that 40% of pizzerias saw sales growth this year during the pandemic, and 20% of them saw their sales go up by 16% or more. The pizzas at Observation are obviously pretty unique in that you're just as likely to see mortadella or figs or gorgonzola as you are ranch dressing and American cheese. Were those toppings meant to appeal to our based pandemic cravings, or is that just the way you and Nick like to cook?
Well, a lot of the pizzas that we have on the menu right now were ones that Nick had originally started in his house. So I wasn't necessarily there for the creative input on a lot of them. But just, yeah, most of it was just like comfort food and just he wanted to do some stuff that was nice and approachable, your normal, our John Jerome Garcia is just a pepperoni pizza, lots of pepperoni. But then he wanted to, get out there and do some stuff that people hadn't really seen on pizzas, especially around Kansas City. And, he wanted to convert people to pineapple on pizza, which we've converted quite a few people to eating pineapple on pizza with that marinated pineapple. And he also just wanted stuff that, you wouldn't normally think of and still kind of gives you like a nostalgic sort of feel, He was big on the nostalgia part of it because, he wanted it to be a comforting sort of meal. Trying to find inspiration for new pizzas is a little hard, but especially since we name each of them after musical artists. But that's where some fun really comes in because we get to explore new music and, learn about these artists that we're going to name a pizza after, and really try and connect food with music. And it's really odd, but a fun process. And then, just trying to do things that aren't normally seen on pizzas.
Yeah. So what is the most popular pizza at Observation?
So it's probably between the Betty Davis, which is all the meats we have, the pineapple, and then I'd say our third one's probably either the Frank Sinatra, the one with figs and prosciutto, arugula, or our John Jerome Garcia, just a simple pepperoni pizza.
Yeah. And I think you noted earlier that, business seems to be pretty good. Do you feel optimistic about the future?
Yeah, we're definitely really excited, especially as we talk more about getting out of the Bower, because while the Bower is great, it's a great spot for us to live, for us to grow. We need to get out of here and get a legitimate pizza oven. We're cooking on 4 pizza stones in a conventional oven like Nick was doing at home. And that's part of why we had to set up our whole appointlet system that we had been using so that people could schedule them out, because we just couldn't keep up with the orders coming in. And as we've changed our website and ordering menu to Toast, we had a couple of days there that were a little hairy because we still needed to figure out how to get that all set up for the way our kitchen works right now. But I mean, that's just the story of the whole year, was figure out what works for you and go from there. Like India and Arvalicia said, try it. It doesn't hurt to try something. You're either going to learn that it doesn't work for you, or it works really well, and you'll keep moving forward.
I mean, the fact that you've been able to kind of keep a successful pizza operation going, as you noted, cooking on pizza stones in conventional ovens, that's pretty unusual. And I think a testament to, adaptations that people have had to make this year.
Yeah, it's nothing like, my job's working as, line cooks in other restaurants. Like, we don't ever have a bad day. We don't ever get stressed out, might get a little backed up, but yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's crazy. Every day is different. Every day we learn something new and figure something out that helps us just be better for you guys. And one thing that we've really learned was, if we mess up somewhere or something, as long as we communicate to our customers and we're transparent about what's going on, nobody's had a problem. Our customers have been some of the greatest people I've ever met.
That's encouraging to hear, that there's been some bright spots and good pockets of customers during this stressful year. Lucy, I want to kick things over to you. How is the demand for hand sanitizer produced kept going through the pandemic? I know the initial reception, as you noted, was overwhelming. Has that cooled down a bit?
Oh, completely. So supply chain's totally caught up. And so we are no longer doing producing hand sanitizer. We still have some in inventory and are still supplying a few places, but we've really made a couple other pivots. Again, like everybody else has said on this call, it's just kind of, what's the next thing? What's going to work for you? Something works for a while, not working anymore, change over. So we felt like we helped, kind of close that supply chain gap originally in hand sanitizer. And since then, we have been able to reopen, following KCMO guidelines, so restricted capacity and such. But two of the other things that we got into this year that were always ideas, but COVID just made us speed up getting these to market were to-go cocktails and our cocktail kits. So super early on, we were like, how do we get cocktails to go happening? It unfortunately was illegal in KCMO. So my husband, Andy, he's one thing if not persistent. And so he was on the phone constantly with city officials and then parlayed that into state officials to get to-go cocktails legalized first in KCMO and then statewide for everybody. It was just something that we kept hearing from our other industry friends, like if we could just sell booze, it would help us out so much. It's good margins for us, good margins for bars and restaurants. And so it was something that we just kept hearing from everybody. And so Andy pushed that so hard with city and state officials to get that passed. And so we're fortunately still doing that. And then this holiday season, like I said earlier, last holiday season, we were having 3 or 4 parties a day at the distillery. And then, so obviously we weren't doing that this year. So it was, how do we bring the holiday party experience to people? So we started offering these cocktail kits, and our awesome beverage director, Andrew Olson, bless his soul, has taught over 150 Zoom cocktail classes the last couple months. Talk about Zoom burnout, but he's been awesome. He's totally led that program. And so we worked with all these great corporate clients of ours to order cocktail kits to go. So they would send those out to their teams all over the place. They would all log into Zoom, get to do a cocktail class, get to drink. So it was kind of their way of bringing a little bit of a holiday party to their team, great gift. And so we did thousands of cocktail kits this holiday season. So it's just kind of, we went from doing a lot of hand sanitizer, a lot of bottled cocktails, a lot of cocktail kits. It's just kind of what's the next thing to keep the lights on, to keep our team working, do whatever you got to do to keep this going.
Yeah, so you noted that the bars have kind of opened back up in guidance with the health department guidelines. Can you talk about some of the operational changes or protocols you've had to make as you kind of negotiate between keeping these places open and keeping staff and customers safe?
Absolutely. So because we were all working together during hand sanitizer super early on, our team got accustomed to wearing masks back in March, like before masks were, the thing everybody was wearing. So getting back open, we were all very nervous to start bringing public back into the space, as I'm sure most people were. And so the safety of our team has been top priority. So the toughest call we had to make was closing the slide. So our slide is currently closed, which is very sad. People are really disappointed to see that, but it's just, for just to be extra careful, we have that closed. But our team has done an amazing job, and knock on wood, we have successfully been open again for 6-7 months now with no major staff outbreaks or anything. So I think that's just a huge testament to our team just doing their very best. And I know it's really stressful on them to also, in addition to their job, be the mask police and remind guests, if you're getting up to go to the bathroom, make sure you put your mask on. It adds an additional layer of stress to the team, but people have been mostly pretty great about it and are very respectful. And we're very fortunate that our main dining space at the distillery is bigger than my house. It's like 3,500 square feet, bigger than most people's houses. So we have a lot of room to spread our guests out, which is a really a thing that we are very grateful for. So we've been able to keep people very, very comfortably far apart.
Okay. Arvalisha in India, maybe a similar question to you in terms of kind of opening during a pandemic and navigating these health and safety guidelines, especially because you have kind of a smaller footprint space. Has it been difficult to kind of navigate those restrictions?
I'll say early on, it was quite an adjustment because with us being a new restaurant and having a grand opening, we had a large crowd of people who were wanting to eat at Maddie's and having people stand outside because obviously you can only allow for a certain amount of people to come in. And so just making sure people knew that we wanted them there, but just being mindful that, hey, we do have to follow the guidelines mandated here. And so I think people who were frustrated initially, they came back because, our restaurant is small, but I think everybody now has kind of, they know what it is going to every establishment. You're going to have to follow a guideline. You may not be able to enter in at the time. You may have to do curbside. So we have made sure that we've curbed all of those ways to serve people the best that we can to get as much food out without putting us at risk or our co-workers at risk and them at risk as well.
All right. Austin, I'll turn things over to you. So there's been a lot of attention paid to ghost kitchens during the pandemic, which, essentially restaurants that don't have a public dining room or a brick and mortar space and take orders online or by phone. And Observation has obviously kind of operated that way throughout the pandemic, back from when Nick was baking
Yep.
pizzas in his apartment and selling them over Instagram to now when you're working out of the Bauer building and have a dedicated website for carryout orders. What are the benefits of that operating model right now? Or maybe a better way of asking that question is, what has that allowed you to do?
Well, so it's a lot easier for us to follow guidelines because we don't have people coming in the building to get pizza. You know, we don't have to worry about capacities or anything. It's a lot cheaper, you know, instead of paying a couple $1,000s in rent and paying utilities on top of that and everything. Right now, you know, we've got a pretty sweet deal with the Bauer event space that we don't pay the utilities, they cover the utilities. And we just rent out the kitchen when they don't have events planned. You know, if they have an event for a small wedding or something, we have to get out of here, and we would go to the Savoy a lot of the time. Over holiday season, we kind of said we don't really want to go be in their way during, you know, holiday season. So it's really been kind of nice because we don't have a whole lot of overhead. I mean, there's 4 people that work here. Only 2 of us are full time. The other ones, I mean, one is Melissa's brother. He mostly just does dishes and drives deliveries. And then we brought Eli Luck from the Savoy to help us, just so that we could trade off Sundays having days off. But the whole ghost kitchen thing, I mean, it's just there's a lot less to worry about with the guidelines and stuff, you know. People stay in their car when we bring them down pizza, so like you don't even have to get out of your car, we'll bring it to you. Like, you don't have, nobody's touching hands or anything. Like, you know, you grab your pizza boxes by the side and you're set, you're good. There's a lot less we have to worry about being in a ghost kitchen, you know.
Yeah. Okay. I'm seeing some audience questions start to come in the chat. So I wanted to just remind folks, we're going to turn to questions here in just a few minutes. So if you have questions for our panelists, please keep adding them in the YouTube comments and we'll get through as many as we can. I want to get through a couple other questions first. I guess first, the second round of the Paycheck Protection Program opened up this week. So it feels like a good time maybe to talk about what support, if any, food and beverage businesses have been able to access right now. When so many of their restrictions have been restricted, when so many of their operations have been restricted or paused. So I'm curious to hear from each of you about whether you were able to access PPP funds or grants or any other resources to help your businesses stay afloat. And Lucy, I guess I'll start with you.
Sure. Yeah, we did. We did receive the first round of PPP, and it was so critical in helping us pay our staff. Again, I don't know how we would have really gotten through that time without it. We have kind of switched up our pay structure to accommodate the fact that business is really inconsistent right now, I would say. So it feels like almost there'll be some news will come out about additional restrictions, and then people are scared and don't want to go out for, I mean, literally like a week. Like it changes that rapidly. And so business is inconsistent. So our team that works on tips and predominantly, we have switched over to just a much higher hourly rate for them to allow consistency in their life and help provide that more consistent paycheck. So they aren't, you know, going week to week looking at, or, you know, am I going to make no money this week, or is this going to be a good week? We don't want to rely on inconsistent business and things that are completely out of their control. You know, they shouldn't be punished for the fact that it's a pandemic, and sometimes people want to go out and other times they don't. And so, but accessing PPP was really critical for us and allowed us to keep on also a lot of our kept all of our office staff, all of us that are behind the scenes that are keeping things running. That we aren't earning tips, but we still need to get paid somehow. So it's been really critical and really helped us get over that hump initially. It was a lot of panic, early on. And so it really helped ease a lot of that. And so with the next round, we're hoping to be able to access that again, just to kind of help further bridge that divide between our loss of revenue right now and also still trying to keep up with our regular payroll.
Okay, great. India and Arvalisha, how about you? Were you able to apply for PPP or any other loans or grants to stay afloat?
No, we did not. We had initially got the first grant that they gave all of the small business owners, but from that we didn't do anything because much like Austin, we didn't have a lot of overhead. Yes, we did just have me and my sister as staff, and of course we didn't take a paycheck during the beginning of it, but we really were a little apprehensive, because you do have, we would have to pay that money back at some point, and we hadn't figured out what we were going to do. And then secondly, we were a little discouraged because we knew a lot of Black business owners were not getting that loan. They were being denied for some reason, and it was just like, well, no point in going through all of the work when we probably won't get the money anyway. So let's just figure out plan C and work that. So as far as the second wave that's coming, I'm not sure if we'll apply or not.
Okay. Well, that's interesting that you mentioned that, Arvalisha, because we had an audience question in the chat that was related to that, referencing that we've seen a lot of stories about minority and particularly Black business owners having more difficulty getting access to government-backed loans during the pandemic. And the audience member was asked if you two had any experience with the small business loans, and it sounds from hearing you talk that it actually maybe discouraged you from applying that experience.
Yeah, it did. Because you don't want to step out like that and then it'd be like, nope, can't get it. So it was just like, let's hustle. Because all we did was hustle anyway to get to this place. And for us, we have faith. So it's like, God, you're gonna have to show up.
Yeah.
And he did throughout this whole entire process. So it was like, even though we didn't apply nor get the small loan, we were still able to keep it afloat.
Yeah.
He made it to where we didn't have a lot of struggle in that time because we didn't have huge overhead. We just had the food truck, but then coming into here, it changed things, but the community has been keeping this open. The community has been pushing us. And so we're just grateful to God that he allowed the people to even see us and say, hey, let me go there. Let me go eat. Let's get some, so it's been a blessing.
Thanks for sharing on that. Austin, how about you? Has Observation been able to access any external funding?
So the first round of all the PPP, we weren't able to get in on because Nick was still, in his house. It wasn't a legitimate small business yet. He was just cooking pizzas for friends. So I think he had missed out on that first one. This second round, I'm not sure if we're gonna try and get into that or not. I mean, we have, very limited employees. The other two, actually, I'm the only one that doesn't have a second job. Melissa works at Ibis in the mornings, Ibis Bakery. Her brother works at the Lowe's Hotel. Eli still works at the Savoy. So I don't know if we'll be applying for it because we're not very in need of it. We do have investors that had helped Nick get this all started in the beginning, and they're still around right now. So for the time being, I mean, we probably won't, but I'm not sure. We might look into it and see as things go forward. We might need more people and everything, and really try and be able to apply for that so that we can, take care of them if we bring them on. You know, that's our biggest concern with bringing extra staff on, is we don't want to say, hey, you know, we got a job for you, and then like 2 weeks later be like, hey, gotta let you go, or, you know, we gotta close down or whatever. Like, so we're trying to keep it minimal for now and just, you know, ride it out.
Okay. I'm going to ask one more question and then we'll turn things over to the audience. I can see we've got a few questions coming through in the chat, and feel free to keep adding those through YouTube comments, and we'll get through those here in just 1 second. So I guess my final question for you all is, if there was one thing that you wanted the public, if you want the diners in Kansas City or drinkers in Kansas City to understand right now about what it's like to operate a business in the hospitality industry at this moment, what would that be? And Lucy, I'll start with you.
Sure. Probably a few things. I think somebody else touched on this earlier, just a lot of customers having a little bit more grace, you know, being forgiving of, yeah, maybe your service took a little bit longer, or maybe something wasn't perfect, but, you know, we're all, I think the big thing to keep in mind is everybody's doing literally everything they can. We are going on month, 10 of this. Like, our teams are burnout. You know, people have COVID fatigue. I get it, but just remaining respectful to the staffs that are working. That's my big thing. I'm very protective of our team. And I just, you know, they're trying to do their best. They are putting themselves, you know, in a situation where if they have to serve someone that's sick, they are running the risk of getting sick themselves. And so just being respectful of the fact that people are working during really challenging times. Everybody's scrapping like hell to just stay open. So just being respectful of that, giving everybody a little bit more grace. And, you know, if their service wasn't exponentially amazing, like, things will turn back around, and when things can get more normal, your experience will feel more normal. But, you know, dining out is a privilege. So if you're dining out right now, just, you know, be respectful of the people that are working, and hopefully that continues past COVID as well, but just supporting the hell out of your local restaurants too. I cannot stress that enough. Like, I promise Chick-fil-A doesn't need your money. I promise that, you know, Pizza Hut doesn't need your money. Like, these small businesses in Kansas City, like, are really living day to day, and we just need to keep doing everything we can, like we were doing back in March. You know, it was like rah, everything local. And then, you know, people start to get a little bit burnout, but just, I hope this like restaurant week and everything kind of revitalizes a little bit of that. And people just keep remembering to put your local restaurants first.
Arvalisha in India, how about you? What one thing would you like people to kind of understand about what it's like to be operating a restaurant right now?
I would say that we're trying. I mean, we are really trying the best that we can. And just like COVID is happening for you, it's happening for us. You know, we have families, we're at risk too. We're trying to stay open so that you can, you know, experience some of our delicacies, but we're trying, you know, when items are not on the menu, that should be, stuff is at a stop. We're in competition with a lot of other businesses trying to get stuff in, and we have to wait. So therefore, when you see your favorite item is gone, we did not do it intentionally. We are trying. When you see that maybe we had to go to phone, but we typically use eco-friendly, we are trying. There are just concessions that we're trying to make to stay open and to serve you. But just like she said, give us grace, because we are trying. But certain things we have no control of it. COVID is happening for us too, like it's happening for you.
That's a great point. Thank you, Arvalisha. Austin, same question for you.
I mean, to reiterate what Lucy and India and Arvalisha said, you know, patience, grace, and respect. You know, we're trying to make it. You know, if there's been a couple times we had to shut down, and we didn't have to shut down. We felt to be safe for us and the people that we were serving, we weren't going to do service that day because there was a possible link to COVID, you know, like, and it was like 4 people away, like, as long we didn't really we weren't really concerned about us. We were more concerned about if we did have it, we don't want to pass it on. So, you know, if we close down for a couple of days because of that, like, we don't want it to scare anybody. We want them to feel safe coming back when we open up, you know, that we did everything that we needed to do to make sure that us giving you your pizzas isn't going to make you sick. You know, we're all trying to keep everybody safe and happy, and just patience, grace, and respect would be the three biggest things I would say.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to turn into some audience questions now. And the first one we have here is one that I think probably a lot of us are thinking about this year, which is what changes that you've made during the pandemic do you think are going to endure when all of this is over? And I think I'll change up the order a little bit so I'm not always putting Lucy on the spot. And I'm going to start with India and Arvalisha. Are there changes that you think might endure when the pandemic has ended?
I'll say just curbside. Curbside, yeah, definitely.
Curbside is definitely gonna stay.
And ready to go meals. People are enjoying having more time at home with their family and not so much time away or cooking and having to, spend an hour prepping a meal, but can go in a restaurant and get restaurant quality food at home. I think that is one thing that is definitely going to stay around.
Okay. Lucy, how about you?
I'm really hopeful to go cocktails stick around. We're pushing to get that, legally, something that can stay around. We have a little bit of a loophole in that we are a spirits manufacturer, so ours will stay around. But I think people expecting to be able to drink a nice cocktail at home that they didn't have to make, hopefully is a habit that most people are pretty used to by now. And then also just speaking personally, as a mom of 2 little boys, curbside, I love not having to get the kids in and out of the car seats to like run in. Oh my God, I hope everybody keeps curbside forever.
That's a great point. The way that some of the changes we've made during the pandemic actually just make it more accessible, the experience of dining to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I there's certain places that I wouldn't go previously because I'm like, I don't want to deal with the hassle of having to get the boys in and out of the car. So something that I had to drive through, whereas now the curbside is just fabulous. So.
Okay, great. Austin, how about you? Any changes you think will be durable?
I actually have a lot, honestly. Kind of like India and Arvalisha said, those meal kits, the cook at home sort of stuff. And I think with that, we might even see more chefs doing instructional videos instead of necessarily cooking your food for you. They'll, maybe make a little video on how to stretch and top this pizza dough and, finish it off in the oven and everything. I think restaurants that do reopen or, stay open might continue to have less seating and a more limited menu. But that they will, like they said, still offer curbside and to-go options. And there might be a whole different menu for that. Like I know Waldo Thai has their Thai Now thing that's a little bit more simple, quick, quick to go menu. I think the hand sanitizer everywhere is gonna stick around. Having a little bottle of hand sanitizer on your table is gonna make everybody feel a lot better. And just the thinking about, your personal hygiene and have I washed my hands since I touched this door and that door and that door, like people thinking about the things that they touch in restaurants a little bit more will definitely stay around. And I think that would also kind of lead to more of the digital menus, ordering online, prepaying ahead of time. So there's not so much transfer of credit cards and menus and all of that,
Okay, great. So I have another question about tipping, and I know, Austin and India and Arvelicia, you operate models that maybe aren't like a traditional service model. So I don't know to what degree you would want to speak on that. I might start with Lucy on that one. How the audience question is, how have the challenges faced by service industry employees been different in terms of their reliance on tips? Are they struggling even when restaurants are able to keep payroll going, or are customers stepping up and filling in those gaps?
Yeah, so I kind of hit on this earlier. It is a concern. I mean, our industry is so unique in that we work for tips, servers, bartenders. And so when you're putting people in that situation where they can't really control, whether or not you have a big crowd or something that night, and it's so inconsistent in business, and we're working on reduced hours, reduced menus that, maybe their overall bill is lower. It all impacts their wages. And so we went to a tip pool method. So, maybe if you're working in the morning and it's slower, but the evening was really good, you don't get punished for your shift. Everybody's tip pooling, and it's allowing us to pay everybody a really decent hourly wage. So that, again, it's just providing that consistency. And that was something that's been important to us since March, was anytime we made a shift to people's hourly pay, we would say, we're going to make a shift. This shift will be good for at least 2 weeks. Should it change again, it will not change for at least 2 weeks. And it was just a lot of that communication and keeping people informed so that they could plan accordingly, because, it's just, nobody wants to live with inconsistency in their paycheck. And so we've done our best to mitigate that on our end, but I think it's a larger industry challenge that hopefully gets addressed in the years to come, of like, maybe this model just isn't sustainable. Maybe this shouldn't be the normal anymore. We've really seen how delicate restaurant services and livelihoods are for people that work in there for things that are completely out of their control. So.
Yeah. India and Arvelicia, I know right now you have more of a counter service model where people walk up and order, but I'm curious to hear if you've still seen changes in tipping behavior on both those orders for dine-in customers or on carry-out orders.
Our customers do really well tipping. Of course, we have greater days than others, but we do the pool system too, because we're a team. Everybody works together. We all get the same amount every day. But they've been very generous. We've seen a lot of growth in if people couldn't tip, they may just get a gift card. They finding ways to still support the restaurant, even if, they couldn't leave a tip. So they're making a way, but we do the kind of the Panera Bread model. Like you said, you come up, you bust your own table. So we don't have servers. So our reliance kind of isn't on tip. It's just kind of one of those things that, ooh, thank you.
A little extra today.
Yeah, thank you. So.
Austin, I just saw a comment come through in the chat directed at you. It says, Austin, we are watching you from Malta. Thanks for your enthusiasm and carrying on Nick's Observation Pizza. Love you, Nikki and George. I'm going to go out on a limb and guess maybe those are Nick's parents.
It is. It is.
Thanks for joining us from Malta, Nikki and George. Yeah. Great to have you. We have another question in the chat here. Maybe a juicier question, which is what actions or assistance are you most hopeful for as Congress reconvenes and a new administration takes over? Austin, I'll start with you. Any thoughts on that?
I just hope that restaurants and small businesses are still very important in the grander scheme of things for everybody all around the world. Honestly, I mean, it doesn't matter what country you're in, where you're from. All people in restaurants are struggling right now, and I just really hope that new administration continues to focus a little bit more on these small businesses that really need help and really keep this country going, I'm hopeful that, some of the craziness that's been going on lately will die down, but I mean, I'm not one for politics really, because it always seems to kind of be the same roundabout thing, just switches sides. I just hope we're not, forgotten about.
Yeah, absolutely. Lucy, I'll ask you the same question. Are there particular actions or assistance that you're hoping for from the new administration and Congress?
Totally. I would say two main things there. One, I think that this administration maybe understands the value a little bit more of direct injection of capital into small businesses, as opposed to being like, oh, we'll give you a tax break. It's like, well, people have to make money for a tax break to be beneficial, right? Like, we need capital. We need, these businesses need money to survive and get through. So it's like, a tax break is, not going to say we don't want a tax break, but that's only going to help you if you make money. So I'm very hopeful that they have a better grasp on that and understand that importance of like people's livelihood day to day requires funding. So I'm very hopeful for that. And then I'm also very hopeful that this administration has a really aggressive strategy for rolling out the vaccine, because all the money in the world, everything isn't going to help if people don't feel comfortable going out again. So nothing's going to go back to business as usual for all of us in the hospitality world until people can go out again and want to go out safely. So until the vaccine's rolled out so widely that people are comfortable going out again, it's just going to be, we're going to be sitting here having the same conversation. So I'm really hopeful that their vaccine rollout plan goes a little bit better than this first month and a half has gone.
Okay. Arvalisha in India, do you have any hopes for a new Congress and administration?
My hope is that there is some type of plan that is put in place to protect small businesses, and especially one for minority businesses, because we're suffering a little bit more because resources did not reach us at all. So there has to be something that protects us, that gives us maybe some type of grace period to where whether we can't get evicted, or maybe another what is it called? A grant is passed down to small businesses, because we only got one that we don't have to pay back, but some of us need another or two, just to carry us through. So that would be my only hope for the new administration moving forward.
Okay, thank you. We are over time. I guess I will add maybe one more comment from my own perspective on that, and that might help us lead into Friday's panel, which is that I'm hopeful that maybe we can extend unemployment benefits a little bit more. So starting in December, the new stimulus package was passed, and they did extend unemployment benefits for workers, but it was at half of the level of the first stimulus package. So it went down from an extra $600 a week to $300 a week, which is not enough for most people to support an absent income, especially for the millions of hospitality workers that have been laid off. And we are going to dig into all of those topics, looking specifically at what the industry landscape looks like for industry workers, cooks, servers right now on Friday, which I hope you will all tune in and join us for. For now, I want to thank our panelists so much: Lucy Rieger of J. Rieger Co-Distillery, Austin Sudemeyer from Observation Pizza, and Arvalisha Woods and India Purnell from Maddie's Foods. Thank you all so much for joining us, and thank you to those of you who are tuning in at home. Hopefully we'll see you on Friday, and have a great rest of your day.